Yo guys, the cartoon world of the Bendy and the Dark Rival, though very stunning and eye-catching, is a pretty dangerous world to live in. You explore the inky depths of the studio, not only to find resources and weapons to outlast the constant barrage of cartoon monsters, but as well as the deranged inky people who were once your friends. As you spend time gathering for your next move, BAM! A change in tone. A dark filter covers your eyes. It's grim, dark, evil. It's the Ink Demon, summoning with its evil, dark domain. But just before the Ink Demon slaughters you to an oblivion, have you ever stopped and wondered, why? Why does the Ink Demon produce this strange world-changing domain? Many will say it's just a simple horror game mechanic, or that it's the Ink Demon's haunting evil presence. But you see, this particular phenomenon was never fully explained, including events similar in the previous game, Bendy and the Ink Machine. Unlike the rest, even if this whole thing is nothing but a simple game mechanic, I see something else, and I would like to explain that something as a theory, though far-fetched, could make you think of this simple game mechanic as something more than what it is. I would like to propose to you essentially, what this theory is fundamentally going to explain to you is that there is another mysterious realm beyond the Bendy Universe. Now, you might ask, how is that the case? How can a realm exist within a realm? I can explain the whys, but I can certainly explain the hows and its existence. A former IHSGames employee summoned back into the world she was birthed from in the first place, the ink itself. And with that, received a gift personally from the Dark PUDDLES itself in the form of magical abilities. But it also gave her another ability to tap into the same domain the Ink Demon produces. This domain the Ink Demon produces is not only fairly creepy, but gives him the strange ability to be anywhere at any time, unlike his Bendy and Ink Machine counterpart who roams around. If you don't hide, no matter what, he will always appear behind you. But how do we know this domain gives him these special abilities and not just his evil presence? Just before the Dark PUDDLES gave AUDREY her powers, the Ink Demon never showed up anywhere. And you might think, though AUDREY was powerless, the Ink Demon would at least show up to kill her since he sees something important in her somewhat, but it's only after he does. Why? Because AUDREY, as a user as the same dimension as the Ink Demon himself, gives the ability for the Ink Demon to appear around her anywhere, anytime. When it comes to non-users of this dimension, the Ink Demon will move around physically in the cartoon world in order to interact with them, such as the lost one he was eating in the elevators, or dragging a transformed Shipperboy Wilson back into the Ink Machine where he belongs. Non-dimension users are unreactive to this dimension, that's the reason why the Ink Demon have to interact with them physically in the real world. But when it comes to dimension users such as AUDREY, he uses it to easily take her out, which is why the Ink Demon could appear around AUDREY no matter the time or place. You might wonder, if AUDREY is a dimension user, just like the Ink Demon himself, how come she can't manually use this ability within the game? AUDREY, though originating from the ink itself, is not as strong as the Ink Demon. The Ink Demon was one of the first creatures to interact with the Dark PUDDLES, so of course, he has more manipulation over its use. AUDREY is more like a radio signal, picking up on a wavelength of the dimension itself. Whether the Ink Demon appears, AUDREY, though unwillingly, picks it up on a wavelength and is able to enter it. It's also understandable that AUDREY would enter the dimension together with the Ink Demon, since both of them have a connection with the Dark PUDDLES itself. Though this sounds very far-fetched, I hope you do understand the points I'm trying to make. I'm pretty much making thoughts out of thin air and trying to connect them with silly string, but I do hope you get me on this. Alright, we explained the dimension existence within the cartoon world. But what if I told you we're not done yet? What if I told you there was a third user of this dimension? That user is none other than...
If you haven't eaten in years, you might not be human.
Yes, Henry, a normal human with no abilities whatsoever. No connection to the dark puddles, nothing. How could he be a user? How could he manipulate a literal dimension? How could he use something near damn magical? Well, in chapter 4 of Bendy and the Ink Machine, we see this. Looks familiar? It's the same filter the Ink Demon uses whenever he appears with his domain. Henry Stein is another user of the dimension itself. The dark puddles probably gave him this ability to him while he was knocked out from Alice in the ending of chapter 3. Though Henry didn't originate from the ink itself, he did help create the world. Without the flick of his pen, Bendy, Alice, Boris, and a majority of the Bendy world wouldn't exist. The world came from his ink. The dark puddles could have possibly given him these abilities because of such, recognizing him as their original creator. Just like when Audrey stepped into the ink for the first time and the inky faces appeared, we have a very similar scenario with Henry, but instead the dark puddles reaching out with its hands. So it's not too far-fetched of a possibility. Despite what we may think, there is another realm within the Bendy Universe, and it's something mysterious to us all. Maybe soon, it could either be fully explained, or just maybe when Bendy 3 releases, its secrets will be fully discovered.